Just such an impressive team, Howard. Obviously what happened on the field throughout the season, but the way they represented themselves off the field with some of those leaders as well. But the on-the-field aspect of what led them to last night's national championship game win, they ran the ball for 303 yards. That high-powered Washington offense only had 301 total yards in the game. So they ran for more than UW's offense put up on the whole. The run game got off to a hot start. What stood out to you about especially how that first quarter played out with the run game?
First quarter going for 175 yards, I believe. And when you think about it, this was an offensive line in a run game that really hadn't put up these type of numbers. You had to go back a year to see some of this type of production. But you saw Donovan Edwards get in there, and he wasn't the second back end. He was the third back end.
Yeah.
He was the third back end. And I think that people will have maybe forgotten about that. And we'll talk about just his trials and tribulations that he had to deal with a little bit later. But when you think about the way they were able to come in and come up with these explosive runs, they really found themselves in situations where these running backs were really running with their eyes. And Edwards, quite honestly, the first one he'll probably tell you, he ran the darkness, right? There was literally nothing there. And he had the wherewithal to be able to bounce it and the quickness and the speed to be able to finish that run. But it was just amazing the way they controlled the game. I thought what they needed to be able to do was run the football to keep Washington's high-powered offense on the sideline. But, I mean, they just dominated the run game. And there were plays in there that the tight ends were making throughout this game where they may have had that defensive end. Loveland may have had the defensive end, and he came around. He shoots down the defensive end. He doesn't chase him down because he's taking himself out of the play. He goes to the next level. And to me, those were the little things that were happening in this game that really blew this thing open. It was what this team was able to do when the ball was not in the playmakers' hands, as far as what offensive linemen, tight ends, the fullbacks, the quarterbacks, ball handling, the wide receivers hustling downfield. This was a total team effort in what they were able to do, and they needed that. And it really put this team in a great spot and put Washington behind the eight ball a little bit.
Don't know how Michigan could have played much better than they did throughout. But Michael Penix Jr., you even referenced it a little bit in your opening comment, he just didn't look as comfortable as we saw him look in the semifinal matchup last week. What were Jesse Minter, that secondary, that pass rush able to do to make him look that way?
I think we've talked about, just what this defense is like, and this is a pro-style defense. So the object is to give quarterbacks multiple looks, and they really did that. There were some times where, it was a zone read, and they never really allowed them to make some of those big plays over the top, which they had become so accustomed to being able to do. And they just continued to change things up. There were a lot of twists and stunts being done by the defensive line. They were able to get the edge. There was a play earlier in this game where the center got walked back to the quarterback and dumped. I mean, there were messages being sent by this defensive line who was playing against, the Joe Moore award-winning offensive line. There was a little extra for that defensive line, right? Because, listen, you can say what you want, but they had been practicing against what they believed is the best offensive line for the last couple of years, and they didn't get that award this year, but it went to Washington. So there was a lot there. And I just thought that the way they changed things up and continued to give them different looks, and it just wasn't the offensive line, but I think the wide receivers got different looks too. There were times when the receiver was wide open down the field, it looks like he probably should have took an outside release and you may hit the pass, and it didn't. He went inside, so it looked kind of awkward. So you could tell that they were not on the same page, and that's something we had not seen this team offensively, talking about Washington, deal with all year.
Thrilled to be joined now by two of the stars of the Michigan Wolverines, J.J. McCarthy and Blake Corum, national champs. Congratulations, guys. We'll get into the specifics of the game here in just a bit, but I'd love for each one of you to just tell me what this night has meant to you, what this experience means to you. J.J., we can start with you, and then you, Blake. Just tell me what's going through your mind right now.
It means everything, but it's bittersweet because it's the last time this group's going to be together. It's such a special group. Love every single one of the guys, every single person in that building, and, it couldn't be done without a whole team effort. So, yeah, it's bittersweet, but damn, it's glorious. Sorry for the language, my bad.
Blake?
Yeah, I mean, I could copy what JJ said, but It's been an awesome journey. You know, coming my freshman year during COVID, went 2-4. I'm like, oh boy, what did I get myself into? And then, who would have thought but us? You know, as soon as we fixed the problem, which we changed the culture, then after that, man, we just started rolling. And, you know, who would have thought but us, you know, that we would be sitting here right now tonight, national champs, which no one can ever take away from us.
You guys would have thought it. You know,
Most definitely.
I think about the TCU game last year. I think about, you know, your injury in the Illinois game, and I remember the Ohio State game specifically, seeing you with tears streaming down your face because you wanted to play so bad, man. You wanted this moment so bad, and you chose to come back, man. Those who stay will be champions. This was not promised. You've overcome your injury. This is exactly what you sought out to do. How does it feel?
I mean, it feels amazing, you know, just because of what God, and you know, you and I talked the other day, but God creates your story from the end to the beginning. And along this journey, you know, I've had trials and tribulations, but I've had a lot of great moments. And this moment right here is probably one of the best moments, you know, of my entire life. Not just because we won the national championship, but we did it with guys like JJ, you know, Team 144. You know, I love the team to death, and you know, it's going to suck leaving, but ended on the right note.
I think one of the things that's really cool is being down here on the field. We've gotten a chance to see you guys celebrate with your family. We talked to your dad, and all three of your sisters came by and chatted us up, right? We were talking to your parents a little bit earlier as well. It seems like it's more than just your family of your playing family, but it seems like it's one big family. Give us a sense of what it means to share it with the special people in your lives.
I mean, it really does take a village. It takes everybody, you know, just for all the parents, all the families out there to, you know, raise the men that played for this football team, raise the men that coached for this football team, and the women that helped out. You know, it takes everybody. It takes a village. That's all I can say. And, you know, just being able to play beside this guy, being able to play beside all the great players on this team, it's going to be a team to remember, that's for sure.
We talked a lot about the adversity you guys faced throughout the season this year, and hey, will that play a factor tonight? And it certainly, now that the season's behind us, we can say and look, clearly, the adversity you guys faced could have divided you, could have, you know, pushed you apart, and it's so obvious that it brought you guys closer together. Could you just talk about that, how you were able to fight through that, and how, in a sense, you guys became closer through the challenges?
I would just say, you know, yeah, the outside noise helped a little bit. But from the get-go, guys like Blake, guys like Mikey, guys like Trevor Keegan, they brought us all together. It was before any of the outside noise that we knew that we had each other's back, and we were a tight-knit group. And, you know, just all thanks to the captains of this team, the leaders of this team, because it wouldn't be possible without them.
Blake, I thought it was really cool that when this game was still hanging in the balance in the fourth quarter, I mean, as much as you guys dominated this game, it's still a one-score game, and then you score the 2 touchdowns to clinch it, and obviously the leading all-time touchdown scorer in Michigan history. But the last one, that final touchdown, where you know this game's out of reach, give me a sense of what it meant to cross that goal line.
It meant everything. Just knowing, you know, at that moment I knew, hey, we did it.
It's over.
It's over. We did it. And I came to the sideline, dapped up JJ, dapped up my offensive lineman, dapped up everyone. You know, maybe even started, you know, having the tears, and someone had to bump me and say, hey, the game's still going on. You know, but it was, like you said, it's just bittersweet. But when I crossed that goal, I'm like, hey, we did it. Team 144, the job's finished.
Your selflessness, JJ. The Penn State game comes to mind immediately. At that point in time in the season, you were still in the Heisman race. You might have even been the favorite, you know, the betting favorite at that point.
I think he was.
You were, huh? And you run it 30 straight times in the second half. Whatever it took. Sometimes it took you throwing the ball. Sometimes it took the team running the ball. But, you know, as a leader, it seems to be so easy for you to put others before yourself. Why is that important, and why is it easy to put these guys ahead of you?
Because I committed to the mission. You know, we set out a mission this year to win a national championship. And when you're on a mission, you play for something bigger than yourself. At the end of the day, this couldn't have been possible without all the selfless players on this team. And, you know, going back to that Penn State game, why would I complain when the greatest Michigan running back of all time is toting that rock? So it just comes down to, you know, the culture of this team. Like, we do everything for each other, and we don't care about getting any of the credit.
Well, one of the really cool storylines in this game was Donovan Edwards, who had a challenging year, and he spoke really openly about some of the mental health struggles that he had gone through, and we know about how tough it is. You guys know better than anyone when you're in the spotlight, and maybe it's not going the way that you thought that it would go. What did it mean to each one of you? And I can start with you, Blake, because you've been so supportive of Donovan during the course of this year when he had opportunities down near the goal line and wanting him to get in there. What did it mean to you to see him, those 2 long explosive runs, and finally getting himself to the spot where he was last year?
You know, I prayed on it, but first, before I even talk about Don, I love the guy, but the Don is back. The Don is back. But, you know, I love Donovan, man. You know, Don and I have created a great relationship, you know, on and off the field, you know, over my last couple years here. And it's something special that we have. And he's a very special human being. And obviously, you said he opened up about mental health, and it's serious. You know, we all should be able to open up about mental health because, you know, it's a crazy world we live in, right? But I'm so proud of him. You know, he stuck through the storm. You know, when he had dark days, he kept pushing. And on the biggest stage, he performed at his highest, best game he had all year. I'm proud of Don.
JJ, I know you have a decision to make after you enjoy this and celebrate this. You know, the fans are certainly pitching for one more year. But Blake, you know, this is it, right? And now you'll start a new chapter. You know, when you think about your time at Michigan, how do you want to be remembered?
Man, there's so many ways I would like to be remembered, but I just want to be remembered as a great human being, man. At the end of the day, when it's not about football, you know, it's not about, you know, having a touchdown record. It's about being a great human being. Did I make an impact off the field? Did I help the community? Did I put a smile on someone's face? That's how I want to be remembered. And, you know, so, you know, 50 years from now or whenever, you know, I'm 6 feet under, I hope people that are still alive that watched me growing up can look back and say, yeah, he was a great football player, but he was a better human being, and I hope my kids like him.
You guys have both carried yourselves extremely well. There is a contingent here, JJ, who has a strong opinion about what you ought to do next year. They're letting their opinions be known. What will your process be of making a decision?
My process is just stay in the present moment, enjoy this with my brothers, and worry about it after, you know, sweet victory.
Sounds good. Congrats, guys, on being national champs.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
And congrats on everything that you've done in interacting with us. You've just been fabulous.
We appreciate you guys.
Yep.
Appreciate you both. Seriously.
A very boisterous Michigan fan base is still out there at the stadium, wanting their feelings to be known about those 2 highly impressive young individuals. And real quick, I mean, shout out to Chuck Ealy and Jimmy Harris. They were both undefeated in their careers back in the 50s and 60s. But as far as just this generation, this last few generations of football, J.J. McCarthy at 27-1, his on-the-field record, the production of Blake Corum, most touchdowns in Michigan football history with 59. The on the field is a part of the storyline, Howard, but in our conversations about college football, and, you know, we heard those 2 guys sitting there with Dave and with Jake, how impressive they are off the field and representing Michigan football. It feels like that should be a big part of their legacy.
It absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that, to me, magnifies what they've been able to accomplish on the football field. You talk about Blake Corum really giving back to the community. JJ, which many people may not know, but everywhere he plays, he donates to that children's hospital in that area, which is phenomenal. And they do this with their NIL money. And I know that there's some situations out there where, you know, people are driving fancy cars and doing a lot of different things. And that's not to say that they shouldn't do that if they choose to do it. But we also need to recognize that these young people are making conscious decisions about who they are and what their legacy is going to be. They've had an unbelievable career. JJ still has a decision to make. Blake has capped his career off, you know, unbelievably with a national title. But they want to be remembered for the turnaround. Yeah. But part of the turnaround was what went on, which people didn't see. Morning workouts, night workouts, film study, Those are the types of things that the outside world doesn't get an opportunity to see, but the program, the inner workings of the program have a true appreciation for that.
And the marvel that is Blake Corum's work ethic, like Big Ten, the Journey has had an opportunity to kind of display some of that, led by Bill Friedman. And JJ, he's been very public about the fact that he stood there on the field after they had that semifinal loss last year and wanted that to be burned, sort of inside of him. And that was the fuel for them. When you think about a lot of folks, go to the end of their previous season and say, we're going to use that as fuel. In what ways, though, was Michigan, in the midst of a lot of different things that could have distracted them, how focused did they stay to get to this point?
I think it goes back to, when I look at championship teams that have ultimately won championships, it doesn't matter which sport it is, but I'm talking specifically about team sports here, they're leaders at every position. They may not have the C on their chest, but they're leaders. The leader may not be the star of that unit, but they're leaders at every single group. And I can tell you that if you go around that Michigan football team and the leadership that really is displayed by each unit, they will all tell you that the leadership is unbelievable. And Ben Herbert, the strength and conditioning coach, to me, has a huge part in what Michigan ultimately was able to do, because he spends more time with these young people than anyone in that program.
How big of an impact a strength coach can have with all the time they spend in those hours, the lonely work that goes into making sure you are physically and mentally prepared to be at your best. And yesterday, on pregame's version of Big Ten Today, Michigan Athletic Director Ward Manuel sat alongside Dave Refson and had some thoughts on his current head coach.
Regardless of the outcome, I appreciate Jim Harbaugh and what he has done for the last 9 years. I hope he stays. But I don't want anybody to be mad if he makes a decision to take another opportunity, because that's what he wants to do. Feel blessed that he was here. I hope he stays. There's no indication of where it's going. We're having great conversations with him and his lawyers. But I just want people to stop focusing on that for a minute. Concentrate on this game. Concentrate on where this team has come. Cheer loud for Michigan. Cheer loud for this team, and allow that to be the focus of today and the outcome of this game.
Howard, you've been here covering every step, every moment of Jim Harbaugh's time as the head coach of University of Michigan football. So you've seen, the excellence that was there, but always that caveat of not defeating Ohio State, not winning big games, a couple of upsets against Michigan State, the postseason, and now this last 3 years of the accomplishments that he's led Michigan football to, and how much he stayed the course and just seemed to be this steady influence on the growth of the program in recent years. So, legacy can be kind of a very broad and tricky thing to discuss, but Ward Manuel kind of laid it out. If we live in the moment, live in the present for a moment, then where would you say that the Jim Harbaugh has perhaps been most impressive in now finally getting Michigan to a national championship win?
I think understanding what it took to put a coaching staff together, the right coaching staff. And he's been very vocal about this coaching staff for the last couple of years. These guys are going to be head coaches. And we saw that play out in the games that he was not able to coach. Coach Moore stepped up and did an incredible job at going out and getting that 1,000th victory, really still as the head coach, the offensive coordinator, and the offensive line coach. I don't know that we've seen anyone in college football carry those responsibilities and be successful doing it. Right. So I think really understanding what it took to put a coaching staff together was important. Understanding that when you go out and recruit, it's not necessarily about getting the best 5-star, but it's about getting the best player that can fit into the unit that's going to make this team successful. And that's what you see in that team. I was saying, and I said this to Jay Harbaugh, I said, hadn't he changed? He's changed. He seemed more loose with us 3 years ago. He was much more comfortable. And he said, I was saying the same thing. But when I talked to him about it, He said, I haven't changed, the players have. The players are leading the team. I'm not as concerned about what the players are doing when they leave the facility. I'm not concerned about whether or not they're going to play for one another, because they had changed that culture. They had changed the mindset of what was important. It was more important that they battle and fight for one another, and we saw all of those things play out. Coach Harbaugh just knew how to press all the buttons, right? He pressed all the right buttons and made things happen. No matter what you say or what is said about what may or may not have transpired off the field, if you stay in the moment right now, like Ward Emanuel talks about, he understands just how special Jim Harbaugh is, right? This is a guy who's taken a team to Indy where he has his name in the stadium. He understands, and players understand that. So players want to be great. They want to be coached. They want to be coached hard. And I think he's gotten to a point with Michigan, to the ultimate prize, what he believed he could get them to when he first took over the job. And I think one of the things that people probably need to start thinking about is, where does he fit in Michigan lore as far as head coaches are concerned? That's not a debate I'm interested in getting into at this particular moment, but I think that is
It's one that will be had, though.
It is one that should be had if he decides to leave or if he decides to come back.
And it felt like just I guess I'll use the term very mature, just the perspective that Ward Emanuel shared there with Dave about, there will certainly be feelings, whether hard feelings or otherwise, but if Jim Harbaugh does move on, but he has sort of accomplished the mission that was set out in front of him that he was so eager to accomplish. And yes, they are still a dominant outfit up front, but the early seasons of Michigan football, when we kind of felt like Jim was maybe still calling the plays, it wasn't as modernized. Now it feels like the run game is more modern, the passing attack is more modern. Certainly not air raid or anything like that, but it seems that he has allowed his program to combine some of his more traditional sensibilities with some modern influences, and that's not always an easy thing to do for a guy who's had so much success that he had before the recent period.
And when you think about it, right, so when you think about just his ability and where he's been, and I think when things really started to take off for him at Stanford, what type of quarterback he had when he was at Stanford. You look at the 49ers, what type of quarterback he had there. Then his time at Michigan, he's had to adapt the system. But more importantly, he's had to trust the offensive coordinator to make the right calls. Now, listen, you can always chime in and say, I think we need to run the ball. We need to look at this. We need to do that. But I think his ability to empower the people around him and not have the fear that someone else is going to be given all the credit, being humble from that standpoint, I think is one of the great traits of true leadership, when you're not afraid for someone else to get the credit for what's going on the field. And he's demonstrated that, particularly the last 3 years.
You think of 3 seasons ago when they finally were able to kind of slay the Ohio State Dragon and win that first Big Ten championship. It was Cade McNamara at quarterback. It was Hassan Haskins largely at running back. It was Aiden Hutchinson, his influence both on and off the field on defense. Now you do have certainly some veterans who were a part of that, but a different cast of characters who've now grown into those leadership roles. Does it feel like if the program, if Jim Harbaugh transitions on, that the program is in a position to get right back to national championship conversation next year?
Well, I think the fact of the matter is you still have to have the pieces in place. I think that starts at the quarterback position. I think when you look across college football, if you don't have the guy under center that can make plays for you and really cause problems for defenses, it makes it tough for you to be really in that hunt. But it looks like this team has been constructed that they're going to be able to make another run. Whether they're good enough to win the national championship next year, that has to be decided on the field. But the fact that they go to a 12-team playoff next year, there's no way that you shouldn't believe that Michigan will be one of those 12 teams.
Now, you are no stranger to championships, and Jim Harbaugh has joked about now he considered the big person's table in his house now, where his dad Jack has won a national championship, his brother John has won a Super Bowl, you've won Super Bowls. What is it about Jim Harbaugh and the way he's now led Michigan football that's allowed him to now achieve this, where he was on the precipice of a Super Bowl before? He's won Big Ten championships. What made this year's version of Michigan football different?
I think being able to connect and being able to understand that the players around, this is all player driven, and to make sure that yeah, you're the overseer of the program and you need to step in and make different decisions. But if you've put the right mix of players together and the right coaching staff together, the sky is the limit, particularly when you have a talented quarterback that can make plays.
He certainly had that. There's no doubt between the QB, the run game, the offensive line, and outstanding defense. That is a big part of why Michigan 15-0 and the national champions. The most rush yards in college football playoff game history. Michigan as a team at number 3 with 303 yards against that Washington Huskies defense last night. But they did make history. First time in CFP history, 2 different players from one team have both rushed for over 100 yards. That run game, that offensive line, that Wolverines offense was led by offensive coordinator and offensive line coach Sherrone Moore. He was on the field last night with Dave Revson and Jake Butt.
We are pleased to be joined by National Championship Offensive Coordinator Sherrone Moore. Coach, congratulations on this win. Just give me a sense of your emotions right now.
It's really indescribable. I really can't put into words how I feel. I'm so happy for this team, this university, our head football coach, all the fans, our families. I really can't tell you how proud I am of this team and happy to be a part of it.
How will you remember this season, Coach?
Unforgettable. Unforgettable. It's something you can't put into words. You work so hard for so long. You stay so many hours. You don't see your family. You don't do this. To be in this position right now is very special and very humbling, and I'm so happy.
Coach, to say you guys came out of the gate firing on all cylinders, I think would be an understatement. In the first 15 plays of this game, you averaged nearly 16 yards per play, which I say is pretty good.
Yeah.
It was obvious there was an emphasis on the run game.
Yeah.
Did you believe in preparing and watching film that you had a decided advantage there?
Yeah, I thought up front, especially the way the guys played last week, I thought we had a chance to run the ball well and be successful in the run game, and those guys really proved that. They came out with a fire in practice every day. It was a violent approach of how they were going to do everything, and their preparation just enhanced that every day, and they came out and executed at a high level.
Can you just talk about Donovan Edwards? Because we mentioned his interview this past week, kind of opening up and about the mental challenge.
Yeah.
And then I saw the celebration by the guys on the sideline when he broke those off.
Yeah. I mean, he's such a special kid, such a positive kid, such an upbeat kid. And when you go through, mental health is real. And the kids like that and the kids that play in these high-pressure situations and things, people ridicule them and criticize them. But he just stayed the course, worked his tail off, and obviously got the results we wanted today.
Did you believe that he was going to be a big part of this game plan, or did it just kind of, hey, he broke a long run and let's stick with him?
No, I had a good feeling. You watch, especially when you practice. I mean, he practiced his tail off, practiced fast, practiced physical, so I thought it would pan out like that, and it was even better than I thought.
It felt symbolic. It felt almost poetic for Blake Corum.
Yeah.
In the fourth quarter, you just give it to 2.
Yes.
In the fourth quarter, you put the ball in his hands.
Yes.
I just want to kind of have you talk about Blake Corum and the way he finished the season.
He's one of the most special players, period. Doesn't matter position I've ever been around. On the field, off the field, he's a legend in Michigan football history. Got to be one of the best players I've ever been around. So happy, Blake, for you. His future, he's going to have a long future in the NFL. And just so happy for us, and we're national champs.
Pretty cool that J.J. McCarthy only had him throw 18 passes in this game.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen, the Penn State game, right? The one that was negated by penalty, but for all intents and purposes, officially didn't throw a single pass in the second half of that game. And yet there was no one after the game that was happier than J.J. I thought it was a really cool moment for him. When you guys were backed up and this was still a one-score game, and he had that third down scramble where he picked up the first down. What did it mean to have him back these last couple games where you could utilize him in the run game? Sherrone?
Yeah, it was crazy. We actually had a walkthrough before the game, and the exact same thing happened. It was a third down look. He saw the coverage. He said, if they play this coverage, I'm taking off. And we all like, what is he doing? And he sprinted and took off. It was awesome. So it was an exact replica of what happened in the game.
And it comes from preparation, which means you sacrifice your time to watch the tape. There's just a lot of sacrifice and a lot of selflessness, and it just continually shows up. What does that do for your job as a play caller, knowing there is no ego? JJ's perfectly happy running the ball. The running backs are perfectly happy. If we have to throw, you guys have to throw to win.
Yeah, it makes it easy. It makes it easy as a play caller because for us as a team, the guys just want to win. So whatever we got to do to win, that's what they want to do.
Well, you got to win. Win number 15. 15-0,
Yes,
national
sir.
champs.
Yes, sir.
What a stretch run it was for the Wolverines, and eventually they ended the season at 15-0. All the doubters, everyone who went against them and didn't think that they could accomplish what they did. This is the tweet directly from the Michigan football account. Bet. #GoBlue. We figured we would add some additional Michigan flavor into this version of Big Ten Today. Coming off the Wolverines' college football playoff national championship victory, former Michigan quarterback, current Fox Sports and stadium analyst Devin Gardner with me right now. Devin, I would imagine you were willing to stay up and watch your maize and blue bring home a national championship. Just kind of starting off, man, what were your general thoughts on what you saw?
There was no chance of me going to sleep. Watching that game, it was a glorious occasion. Enjoyed it like nothing other. But my assessment of the game is what I thought would happen. You know what I mean? It's just watching Washington on film. I could see that they're a really good football team, and Michael Penix was a really good football player. But he essentially played 7-on-7 for the majority of the season, right? He was able to sit back, read defenses, and masterfully, I might add. He was really good. I had a few clips that I broke down where he got through his read in under 3 seconds. So it's hard for any pass rush to get there and sack him, but you can hit him. And Michigan was able to do that, and I think that was the difference in the game.
And you certainly yourself have experience in knowing what the pressure cooker is of being a Michigan football player, a Michigan football quarterback, and following up the legacy of a great player like Shoelace Robinson. And so for you in your career and kind of seeing where you felt like maybe there's on the precipice of something, but not getting to that national championship hump,
100%.
how good does it feel to now see this current group of Wolverines come off a couple of Big Ten titles and then take that next step?
I've talked about this quite extensively on a number of different platforms, and it's just kind of my own experience. It's a little different than other players, I think, just because, I grew up in Michigan, but by the time I started actually watching football, maybe, let's say 13, 14 years old, actually watching and paying attention to football, I had never seen Michigan dominate, right? So all the legacy of Michigan and all the dominance that everybody talked about and the blue blood culture and all those different things, I just never got a chance to experience it myself. And then obviously going to Michigan, dream school, all those different things, and not having all the success that I would have loved to have. Obviously, we won a Sugar Bowl championship, and I had some opportunities during that season to help the team win games, but I had never experienced Michigan in a way where I absolutely knew going into the game as a fan or as a player that for sure there's no chance of us losing, right? I'll bet the house on it that we're going to win this football game. And for these last few years, that has been my experience as a fan, just watching Michigan go in knowing it's a 95% chance they're probably going to win this football game. And it was on full display this entire year, unblemished, untied, undefeated, 15-0 national championships. It's a special, special thing.
Specifically to the action last night, Devin, this was an offensive line and a run game for Michigan that had been good, well above average throughout the season, at times dominant, but there was such a standard that had been set the previous 2 years where I think many of us, myself included, wondered, okay, how going into the college football playoff, especially beginning with Alabama and their front seven, how much will they need from the run game to emerge even more? We saw it in the semifinals and then certainly last night. What were your observations of the way Michigan ran the football and how big of a key that was?
I mean, I have a really unique perspective just because I study the film so much. I do a show called Monday Morning Quarterback with Sam Webb on Monday mornings after these games. And so I have to study the film and get down deep into it just so I can give the fans kind of the idea of them being maybe a coach or a player and understand what's going on. And all season, I was beating on the table. To start the season, I did the spring game on Big Ten Network, and I said this is going to be a different team. And that's why I thought Blake Corum should go to the NFL, just because with the emergence of J.J. McCarthy, you're not going to have as many opportunities because he's going to develop, and they're going to allow him to push the ball down the field a little bit more. And so the run game wasn't going to look like it did before, not to mention you lose an All-American center. But I always saw that the way that they were so strategic about the run game and putting guys in place, getting in those heavy sets, different things like that. I knew they were capable of leaning on people and running the football. It just hadn't showed itself yet because they were more of a balanced football team. But at the end of the year, when it starts to get a little cold, you know that in the Big Ten, you have to be able to run the football, and they proved that they can. Obviously, it started with Penn State, and then in the championship game, it was just a beautiful thing to watch, to see Donovan Edwards, who hadn't done much all season, come out, get his vision, take it to the crib 2 times in a row, right? He had like 2 carries, 87 yards at one point. And so it was kind of a microcosm of what I've been explaining the entire year, that the running game is fine. It's just a different football team. But when they needed it most, they leaned on their senior leadership in Blake Corum, and he was able to put together a magnificent performance and walk away with the MVP like I said that he would.
And I'd love to get your thoughts specifically on the topic you're referencing there. Not only the on-field production of a guy like Donovan Edwards, but we've heard from multiple Michigan players talking about, the mental health aspect of wanting to perform at the highest of levels, the scrutiny that's on modern players. And I'm certainly older than you, but just thinking about the way the game has evolved over the last couple of decades here, the additional social media pressure and the additional scrutiny that a program like Michigan, that its star quarterback who we watch meditate before every single game in J.J. McCarthy, and then Donovan Edwards being very public with his story of how he's felt in recent weeks coming off of a season where he wasn't performing near the level that many of us thought he would throughout this past season. You were there. You did that. You know what it was like in the pressure cooker of Ann Arbor and the expectations of being not only a quarterback but a leader for the Wolverines. What have been your observations of the way that these players have been very forthright in their willingness to discuss some of those off-field, some of the mental and emotional struggles, and the way they've come through it so strongly?
Yeah, it's really cool just because it's a sign of ultimate strength. For Michigan, playing for Michigan is enough pressure already, right? Being the quarterback at Michigan, I remember when I was a player, I kind of likened it to being almost the president of the United States. There's so much pressure. There's so much expectation because of the history of Michigan football. And so that pressure, and then you bring it on that everybody wants you to lose. And then you bring it on that, oh, you cheated and that's the only reason you were winning. You know what I mean? That pressure was immense. And I'm just telling you, I don't think that there is any other team that could have dealt with all that they dealt with and been able to get to the precipice of college football and win the championship. And a lot of credit, I believe, goes to a lot of guys on the team, but it starts with your quarterback. You know that. That's the CEO of the team. You got to make sure that all the guys, not only yourself, all the guys are ready to go. And fair or not, I talk to young quarterbacks all the time. People on the team, offense or defense or special teams, whoever it is, before games, they're going to look at the quarterback and see if they are prepared to win, right? They're going to look at the quarterback and see if the team is going to win. And is that fair? Absolutely not. But that's what you sign up for when you play quarterback in general. But at the University of Michigan, it's heightened just a little bit. And I think that J.J. McCarthy, obviously super talented, able to run, throw, do all these different things, and very selfless. But his ability mentally to keep his team locked in and keep himself locked in was the most special thing I've seen in I don't know how long, since I've been watching college football, in my opinion.
And we're joined now by Michigan coach Jim Harbaugh. Mike Sainristil still here with us as well.
Beloved son right here, Dave.
What does this moment mean to be able to share it with these players, with your family, with all these fans?
Oh, it's glorious. It's glorious. I mean, my two loves, my family at work, players, coaches, staff, and my family at home. They're the best. I mean, it's just unanimous support. You never have to wonder if anybody has your back. And it's someone at home. It's someone on the team or teammate or teammates. Just pull you through, have your back, and it's glorious. It's just glorious. Guys like this, I mean, could rattle off so many true playmakers. I mean, that make the magic happen. And that 4th and 13, that was a huge play. We're protecting the 7-point lead and a 14-point lead at that time. Was it 14 or
14,
7?
yeah.
14, my goodness. And then he picks it off. That seals the game. Takes it back to the 6 or 7 yard line, and an old former receiver right here. Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards, J.J. McCarthy, Junior Colson, and the way this guy tackled was incredible. Will Johnson, coming out of the halftime, we said we got to get this momentum back, and lo and behold, first play, there he goes. Jalen Harrell, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, they did that. I mean, 2 gifts from the football gods. Jake, you know they did it. Yeah. They did it. It was just spectacular. But these guys, these players, man, just nothing fancy, just old-fashioned, good old-fashioned hard work and teamwork, Dave.
It's a joy to watch the players compete, and it's a joy to listen to you guys talk about one another. In the apparent love that you guys have day in, day out, what's it been like for you as their head coach to watch them in the way they carry themselves?
It's just glorious. I can't walk down. I walk down the hallway, the administration hallway there, and I just want to have a conversation with every person that's there. Christina DeReuter and Albert Karsney and Scotty Ops and Dave Avloff. I mean, the guys at Claiborne Green. I mean, everything that he does for us, and just staying honest and disciplined in the classroom and doing right. You walk down the coaches' hallway, and Sherrone Moore, Jesse Minter, Jay Harbaugh, the guys. They're just always football collaboration going on and talking ball. I mean, those guys are my mentors. Get down to the weight room now we're talking to the center of player development, Coach Ben Herbert, and the A-team, man. That is the A-team. That's where the magic happens. Nobody's got a Ben Herbert. I walk out on the field, and it's just, what do we got today, Coach? What do we got? That practice yesterday was banging. We got some more of that. I go, yeah, we got some more of that. We got a little bit of something else too. But it's never any kind of attitude of, oh, why we got to do this? Why we got to, other programs don't have to do this. I mean, never. And every time I look their direction, these players, these young student athletes, I mean, every time I look their direction, they're doing right. Either they're always doing right or their timing's impeccable, because every time I look, they're doing right. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. Jim, one of the things that I think is really cool here is how much this program means to you. You grew up around this program. Your dad was an assistant for Bo Schembechler. You were one of the great players in the history of Michigan football. You finished 3rd in the Heisman Trophy balloting, and you came back home.
Can I get that in writing? The spoken word is really nice, but it'd be nice to get that in writing.
It's forever. It's forever.
Oh, it's on video. Good.
It's floating around now. It's there for posterity, Jim. But it is different when it's your school, and let's just be honest, it wasn't in great shape when you took it over. So what does it mean to you, not just to win a national championship, but to win a national championship at Michigan?
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's glorious. It's everything that, like I said, we worked for. It's just, and it's been a team effort all the way. And man, look at this man here, one of the great players we've ever had at Michigan, a true Michigan man. And here's a Michigan man right here, and I got another, 110, in that locker room right now, and probably another 30, 40 that are still coming along. We'll train them up. We'll get them there. We'll get them to that point. Beautiful. I mean, grew up here as a kid. My dad coached secondary at Michigan from 1973 to 79, and Bo Schembechler. My dad would always come home and tell saying, hey, Bo said this, and the thing he talked about the most was the team. No player, no coach, is more important than the team. And then when I played here, I heard it at, with numbing repetition. The team. No player, no coach, more important than the team. We brought that back in 2015 when Jake was here, and the other beautiful one is those who stay will be champions. And tonight, put an exclamation on that, and nothing but love for these players, these coaches on this team, and players that came before them, like Jake and so many others that they got this program, to the top, and with hard work. Nothing fancy, hard work, teamwork.
Mikey, what's it like to play for him, for a guy who bleeds maize and blue?
You guys just heard me say it. I wouldn't want to play for no other head coach in the country. This man, Coach Harbaugh made me a promise as a recruit that by the time I leave here, I will be a Michigan man, and he kept that promise true. The fact that I was able to decide to come back with another group of guys, I believe wholeheartedly we made the right decision to come back and, help Coach Harbaugh get this thing done. And the love he has for us, he treats us as sons. And, one of the things I said early this season was, this is my football dad right here.
You added it was those who work hard will stay.
We did add that,
and
Jay.
those who stay will be champions, right?
Those who stay will be champions. Those who work hard will stay. Those who work hard will stay, and those who stay will be champions. You could say it. You could say it either way. You could say it both ways, and not just on the football field, champions, but being a Michigan man. That's being a champion. Being a graduate from the University of Michigan. Another shout out to Claiborne Green. Another 1,000 on the APR. It's just beautiful. And Mike's going to go to the NFL. He's going to play. He's going to be a very, very high pick. Going to play for a very long time. But he's got that old Michigan degree in the back pocket and working on a graduate degree too. I mean, it's just it's glorious, good stuff.
Well, Coach, congratulations. Mike, congratulations again. Guys, go enjoy it.
Thank you.
Really, really fun to be on this ride with you guys. Congrats.
Thanks. You do a great job, Dave. We appreciate it, and we know this guy's a rising star too.
Oh yeah. Oh, the star has already risen. Yeah. It's high in the sky, Jim.
It's up there. It's up there. Put that in writing.
It's been a pleasure to watch you guys, man. It has been an absolute joy to watch you guys compete in the relationship you guys have. It is so special, and congratulations. I couldn't be happier for you, Coach.
Well, we appreciate you too. I mean, TTG is one of our star TTG guys who comes in and talks to our team every year.
TTG, translate.
Teach the game. Teach the game. Yeah.
And wise words a little bit.
And wise words.
Wise words.
If you're lucky, you get the wise words. You got to earn the wise words.
You'll give me some words of wisdom.
We don't let just anybody come up and stand up.
Unfortunately, on the opposing sideline, you always have the folks who come out on the other end of a national championship stick. That is Kalen DeBoer, Washington head coach, hugging his quarterback, Michael Penix Jr. They have known each other for such a long time at this point. Of course, going back to their time together in Bloomington, while Michael Penix Jr. was the quarterback for the Indiana Hoosiers, Kalen DeBoer, the very successful offensive coordinator for the Hoosiers. So their success has, in a lot of ways, just paralleled each other, going on the trajectory that led them to a national championship appearance last night. In the very near future, we'll be able to consider Michael Penix Jr. a Big Ten alum of multiple institutions in some ways here. So now that we saw Washington on the field, national championship competing against Michigan, and we've been anticipating this move for a bit here with them entering the conference, what are your impressions of where the program sits at the moment?
Well, I'm excited to where they are. And, you talk about Coach DeBoer and what he's been able to do to bring this program back to prominence when he took over. It's really been a steady climb for them. So you expect him, obviously, he has to retool. He's going to lose some explosive players on the offensive side, but they've done a really nice job on the recruiting trail. So you have to be able to replace your quarterback, and you have to kind of adjust your system to what you have on the roster now. But I like the direction that he has Washington heading, and I think they're going to be formidable opponents once they get into the Big Ten. Will they need to tweak a few things? Probably so, but that's anyone that's going into a new conference, or that's anyone going into a new season, because you never have that same style of play or that same roster that you had the previous year, even if you had as much success. So there'll be some retooling, but he's already proven that he knows what he's doing at the coaching position, and we can expect him to continue to have that and get that done here in the Big Ten Conference.
Going into last night's national title game, Washington had the third best record in the entire country at 25-2 going into that game. That's the 2 seasons that Kalen DeBoer has been the head coach. And it struck me where both Michigan and Washington, they're programs that aren't, to the point you made earlier, they're not recruiting all the 5-star talent in the world from a recruiting perspective, but you can tell how well coached this team is. So how does that end up correlating to Washington being able to come in and join this conference and as deep as the Big Ten will be next season?
Yeah, you think about this, that with the way the transfer portal is right now, you can go into the portal and find the right pieces that you need. Then it's about really getting them and bringing them together as a team. And that's really only something that your coaching staff is able to do. You have to make sure you're bringing the right people into your program, not just people that want to put up big numbers because you see that Washington wants to throw the ball all over the park. I think they're going to be able to do that. They have the coaching staff to be able to develop the players into what they're going to need to be, compete for championships here in the Big Ten. But it's still going to be a process, right? Travel is going to be a process. All the things are still going to be there, but they have the right guy that's leading the program right now. So it's just a matter of making those subtle changes that they'll need to make.
You referenced the transfer portal. Will Rogers, a quarterback from Mississippi State, a lot of excitement about him being added in, especially with the way Kalen DeBoer tends to operate on offense. Our guy Jake Butt was on the scene in Houston following the Michigan Wolverines on behalf of all of us at the Big Ten Network. And if you saw, after the Rose Bowl win against Alabama, Dave Revson put out a little tweet, just put a shot out there of a big, sweaty Jake Butt. And he was apparently sprinting down the concourse to get there because they don't allow all the media to stay on the field throughout the entirety of the game. So you kind of go up to the press box for a little while. And at that point in the fourth quarter where the game is in the balance, Jake Butt was making his way down to the field, and he just took off sprinting, just like tight end Mackey Award-winning Jake Butt style. So he came prepared last night with a towel. Let's bring my guy in right now. We got Jake Butt, who's still in Houston right now. And I know that, I saw you after the game last night. We've been playing back a number of the clips, Jake. You did seem more prepared for the elements as we showed there. You had your towel ready to go.
Oh, I had to. And listen, so it's, Houston, so it's going to be hot. But yesterday morning it was pouring down rain. So I said, oh, no, it's going to be humid too. And humid it was. But thankfully I was prepared, as you said, and I brought a towel from the hotel, brought a couple extra shirts. And, you just get excited for a national championship game, right? Like, of course, the heart's going to be beating. The energy's high. So it was another fun game.
Well, a number of topics looking forward to discussing with you here. Let's get to the on-field aspect of it initially, where the Michigan offensive line, the Michigan run game, they were certainly good, at times excellent during the season. What did you anticipate the Michigan run game would be able to do last night against Washington, and how did they either meet or exceed that?
Pretty close to that, and I knew that would be an emphasis too. I knew that had to be the game plan. When you're playing an elite quarterback like Penix, when you're playing an explosive offense like Washington, the best defense is to keep them on the sideline. So you got to run the football. And the truth is Washington, the defense wasn't the headline for their team this year. Texas averaged in the semifinal game, Texas averaged nearly 7 yards per carry. I felt at times Texas just got away from the run. And what you saw in this game very early, you got an indication that Michigan was going to be able to run the ball seemingly at will. Now, I will give credit to Washington because after that first quarter, there was a long stretch in that game where Washington's defense did answer the challenge and they stepped up. For Michigan to give up 13 points in that game, absolutely remarkable. I talked about it pregame is, listen, Washington's going to move the football. They're going to make some plays, and they did. To me, I thought a big key in this game was, can Michigan, backed up in their own territory, can they force Washington to kick field goals and avoid giving up touchdowns? That was a big, big storyline in this game. Coming out of half, Jim Harbaugh talked to us, said at halftime, defense, it's you guys are going to take the field. Someone needs to make a play to seize the momentum. And how about Will Johnson, the rising star sophomore corner, with that interception to seize back the momentum to do exactly that? How about Mikey Sainristil, under 5 minutes left in the game-sealing interception? I thought this was poetic, Ant. Your two leaders, your two captains, your two veterans. Mikey Sainristil on defense has the interception, takes it all the way back into scoring position. And then Michigan gives it to their offensive senior captain, number 2, Blake Corum, for him to punch it in. Truly poetic for those that have been following this team all season.
We know how closely you obviously have followed this team, not only from your playing career and in your post-playing days here as an analyst with the Big Ten Network and other outlets. So just love to close with your thoughts on the trajectory you've seen this program go. You were there, a part of Michigan football as a player when Jim Harbaugh first took over. You know the roller coaster that it has been at times on the field, and now to get to the point almost a decade into Jim Harbaugh's tenure of winning a national championship.
Yeah, and I just can't help but think about how great of a sport football is. And what makes football great is every game matters. every play matters. You know, it's a limited, condensed season. You get 12 guaranteed, and then maybe you go to a conference title for 13. Then you might go to a playoff game and a potential national championship game. Michigan got to play 15. Only 12 were guaranteed. That, when it's scarce like that, the pain of a loss is magnified. The joy of a victory is magnified. And you work, it's crazy to think for us as football players and fans and now analysts. You work year-round for 12 guaranteed opportunities. I say opportunities because all you're promised is a chance to go play your best game. And even sometimes when you play your best game, even that's not good enough. Again, further emphasizing what makes this game so special. You have to ride the emotional roller coaster. When Jim comes in my first 2 years, we were 5-7 in 2014. We weren't thinking about a national title. We weren't even thinking about a conference title. We didn't even make a bowl game in 2014, the year before Jim got there. And then we go back-to-back 10-win seasons. And yet, as good as that was, there was still deep-rooted pain because you can't beat Ohio State. You can't beat your rival. And they stayed the course. As Jim says, those who stay will be champions. It took years and years and years until finally in 2021, as snow is falling in Ann Arbor in the big house, Aiden Hutchinson, the leader, the guy we can point to change this program around, has a historic day to sack C.J. Stroud and pressure C.J. Stroud, and Michigan does it. But you can't beat the SEC. You can't win a playoff game. You get there and you do it in Columbus next year. You beat Ohio State in Columbus, and then you're a favorite versus TCU. You talk about heartbreak. That one was written already. It seemed like Michigan, that was their year, a collision course, a rematch with Georgia, and you lose to TCU. The absolute pain of that victory is what makes the joy of this season so great. They're related on opposite ends of the spectrum. And I just paint that whole picture because it's been a roller coaster from a macro picture of nearly a decade. It's been a roller coaster in a micro picture. Right. Just as you look as of the drama this year, it has been a phenomenal season for so many reasons. And what a way to end it.
Been so much fun to watch you soak it in, my friend. Outstanding work, not only last night, but of course throughout the entire season. Congratulations to you, all the folks who care deeply about the Wolverines. That's my guy, Jake Butt. The winningest coach in Michigan State Spartans history, Mark Dantonio, with another honor. He will now be in the College Football Hall of Fame. Quite an accomplishment for Coach Dantonio. And, you know, we've both gotten to be around him quite a bit over the years, Howard. And so no surprise that this honor comes, but really well earned by the legacy that he left in East Lansing.
Yeah, he did an outstanding job when you think about what he was able to do, how he brought Michigan State back to prominence, taking them into the Big Ten championship game, beating Ohio State, having a chance at the playoff run. You know, he's really had done a great job of making that program prominent once again, not just in Michigan, but on the national landscape. And it was fun to watch. I go back and remember, you know, our first time we sat down and met, we were having lunch with him in his office. And he was always so good to us here at the Big Ten Network, giving us the access that we needed, told us things that he probably didn't need to tell us. But it's just one of the great stories. And I think he's always was looking out for his players and wanted the best for Michigan State, and it's a tremendous honor for him and his family.
We certainly stay close to that program even at this point in retirement and helping them, you know, lead through this next phase of what Michigan State football is becoming. Howard, outstanding work, man. I know you were here late last night. Thank you for joining me here today.
Hey, no problem. It was fun.
Everyone was celebrating the Michigan Wolverines winning a national championship in football, and no surprise, the head men's basketball coach, Juwan Howard, a part of that celebration. He took to social media to congratulate Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines football team for bringing home a natty. It's an athletic department that is certainly no stranger to championships. We've seen Michigan do that quite a bit over the years. We'll transition into some hoops conversation in a moment, Trent, but of course the topic of the day is Michigan bringing home a national championship for the Big Ten. Did you get a chance to catch any of the game last night?
I did watch. No hoops last night in the Big Ten, so I did watch the game, and it's just cool to see the progression. This team, what they've gone through, what Jim Harbaugh's gone through, these players. In recent years, we've heard a lot of it, and so just as a basketball guy, watching that whole story play out, finishing with the championship, it's always special. It seems like it was won by a great group of young men as well.
all national championships are really great to be able to bring in, but it had been a while since the Big Ten won one in football. There is a team in basketball that is #1 in the land, may have a chance to bring home a natty last season, and Purdue will be on the court tonight against Nebraska. For the Boilermakers then, I mean, as they continue on as #1 in the latest rankings, what stands out about the progression they continue to make? You and I haven't gotten to discuss them in probably over a week now.
Yeah, Purdue's writing their own story, especially coming on the heels of what happened at the end of last season. But I go to their game against Illinois on Friday night, top 10 opponent, and it just shows their dominance, their depth of a team. Zach Edey only had 2 points in that first half, was in foul trouble in the second half as well, still finished with 10 and 15, but they have other guys that step up. Trey Kaufman-Renn, 23 points. He's kind of been a bit up and down. Mason Gillis, 8 points, 8 rebounds, knocks down some threes. So even Ethan Morton's knocking down shots, Cam Heidi's knocking down shots. So the depth of this team, they didn't have that last year. They also didn't shoot the ball that well last year, around 30% from three last season. This year, up by 40%. You surround a player like Zach Edey with great shooting, and that's going to cause issues for just about any opponent. The guy, though, that I love that really kind of makes things go for them is Braden Smith. And again, 13, 6, and 6 against the Illini. That's about what he averages. At the beginning of the game, though, he was at a different pace. He really dictated the tempo. You felt like Illinois was on its heels. He had 10 points early, got Purdue going, got that crowd going. The confidence, the moxie that he plays with, I think really stirs the drink for the Boilermakers. And you have that at the point guard, you have the center, you have shooting around them, and they're looking really good right now.
It's hard not to be impressed with the effort that the Illini showed on the court. Now, I'm wondering, because Purdue is so exceptional in so many ways, is this maybe a measuring stick opportunity for Nebraska in a similar way where the Illini were able to step out there and kind of showcase what they could be, even though they didn't come out with the win against the Boilers?
Well, I like Nebraska. Now, they're coming off a loss at Wisconsin, gave up 88 points. They have to defend better. They got to rebound, especially against Purdue. If they can handle Purdue on the boards in terms of make that somewhat comparable, and they can knock down some shots that could be problematic for Purdue. All right, I know Purdue's the team to beat, but Nebraska, they spread the floor. About 45% of their shots are threes, so taking a lot of threes. We know Keisei Tominaga, he's been playing well lately, but they got a number of other guys. Hoiberg and Wilcher and Lawrence, Juwan Gary shooting over 40% from three this year, so a lot of guys that can shoot the three. And then I go to their center position, and this, Anthony, I think is what could cause Purdue issues. Rink Mask can step out and shoot threes. He took 7 of them against Wisconsin, made 2 of them, shoots over 30% on the year, and he's a hub for them offensively. So at the center position, he's going to space the floor. If he can knock down some shots, if he can bring Edey away from the basket, that really opens things up for the Huskers. And then just how they run their offense. A lot of cutting action, a lot of off-ball screens. Purdue's had some issues at times with containing guards. You know, Tominaga can get loose, he can get hot. Bryce Williams, another big guard, about 6'7". Purdue had some issues with Marcus Damascus. Look, whenever we say issues with Purdue, it's like we're really trying to get critical because they've been so good.
Yeah.
But these guys, this Nebraska team's good. And Bryce Williams at 6'7" against a smaller Purdue, at least starting backcourt, could cause them some issues. So this Nebraska team has got to respond quickly after really, a poor defensive effort against Wisconsin. But they have the goods on offense to make this interesting.
When you look at Purdue, and especially specifically with the Zach Edey, I'm wondering, because the depth of the big man in the Big Ten is maybe a little bit less this season than what it's been in recent years, is that impacting the way that Purdue is utilizing Zach Edey? Are other teams able to dictate when and how, Matt Painter is using Edey in any way?
It's hard to dictate much against Purdue. They're the dictators typically most games, even against. So I wouldn't say so. I've seen that yet. Now Nebraska, with a center that can pull them away from the basket, they could do that. It was interesting, though, against Friday night against Illinois. They started Zach Edey on Illinois' point guard, Ty Rogers, who's 6'6", but he does his work around the basket. Great offensive rebounder, great post-up player. Well, he totally negated Rogers, allowed Edey to stay around the basket, and really caused a lot of issues for any drives from other Illinois defenders. So can Nebraska, can other teams, Ben Krikke from Iowa, just thinking of what's coming down the line for them, can they pull him away from the basket? That could bode well from those teams. But look, as I mentioned, as I led with, this Purdue team's so deep. And you have a guy like Trey Kaufman-Renn, another big man scoring 23 points. Mason Gillis, Caleb First. So this team's big, they're deep, they're extremely well coached, and now they have the guard play and three-point shooting to go along with that. It's going to be hard any night.
Now, Indiana and Rutgers both strike me, and that's the other game that we have on the Big Ten men's basketball schedule tonight. They both strike me as teams that, at least up to this point in the season, have shown some highs and lows. And I think for the Hoosiers, some of those highs, with the expectations that program historically always has, that's where the fan base feels like they should be on a consistent basis. Is there a formula for us to see what the peak of Indiana has been on a more regular basis?
Well, Indiana's they're 11-4. They're 3-1 in the conference. So I think because they haven't always looked great, they've just struggled by some lower major opponents and barely won. They've had a couple games against Auburn where they got blown out. They haven't always looked the best, but I think Mike Woodson has got to feel good about where they're at in the season, especially now they got Xavier Johnson back. You got to remember, they were starting 2 freshmen, 2 sophomores for a good portion of the season. Gabe Cupps was playing 30 minutes plus in many games. They weren't expecting that coming into the season, and Xavier Johnson is back at 18 points against Ohio State, 3 assists, 0 turnovers in 34 minutes. That is so crucial for them. If he can be their guy as that lead guard and give them scoring because they're so good on the inside, this team is going to be tough. I think they're an NCAA tournament team, and you pair Xavier Johnson, and look, he might need some time. You know, I know he had a great game against Ohio State, but give him some time to get his rhythm, his conditioning back. You pair him with Malik Renew. He had 23 and 7 against Ohio State. That's what he's averaging over the last 4 games. He's hit 8 threes in that time. So those two could be one of the best inside-outside combinations in the Big Ten. Renew is also a very capable passer. I think he played behind Trace Jackson Davis, for a year, and saw him as another lefty in the post and how he liked to get to the middle and make plays for himself or for his teammates. So that gives them another playmaker from the post position. You have Khalil Ware, 7 feet tall, very talented guy. I think, and also Trey Galloway can kind of slide into maybe a second or third type of scorer with Xavier Johnson back. So I like how this team is kind of coming into form. They're not very deep, though, and that's critical. C.J. Gunn, they need somebody off the bench any given night to give them a boost. C.J. Gunn, big 10 points against Ohio State. They got to have somebody, whether it's him or Anthony Walker, Gabe Cupps knocking down shots because they're not that deep.
Since neither team necessarily goes into a super deep bench in this particular matchup, then is foul trouble something to keep an eye on between the Hoosiers and the Scarlet Knights?
That's always an issue. I think if your main guys, you want to keep them out of foul trouble, especially for Indiana, Malik Renew, Xavier Johnson, as I said, they got to stay on the court. That was an issue earlier in the season against UConn with Xavier Johnson. And for Rutgers, they're not that deep, all right? They got to be better defensively, and they got to be better rebounding. There's been some games where it's really inexplainable with that roster, with Cliff Lamore in the inside, that they got to be better on the boards. And gave up 88 points against Iowa. I know Iowa, they get up, they run and gun, and they just played to Iowa's pace. I think this Rutgers team has to play inside out a bit more. They need to slow the game down a bit more, too. They play at a pretty fast pace, and that's not suiting them that well because historically, Anthony, you look at the three-point shooting, sub 30%. Field goal percentage, sub 40%. Not a good free throw shooting percentage team either. So you look at all those things, it's not looking great. But I think if they can slow the game down, play a bit more Steve Peichel smash mouth basketball, that bodes well for them. Mawat Mag, he's back. He looks healthy. He had 24 against Iowa, knocked down some threes. Derek Simpson was playing better, had 23 against Ohio State, struggled that game against Iowa. They need, talk about depth, they need everybody to be playing well. And if they can knock down some shots, they could cause some issues.
Really quickly, Trent, before we close the show here, the next team in the next tier, Wisconsin is ranked, but we just saw Michigan State and Northwestern take each other on as well. Is Wisconsin definitively that third team in the conference right now?
Illinois is right there. I think Wisconsin is 2 or 3. They're playing so well. They're so deep. They're so balanced. They're more athletic. We wouldn't have said this about Wisconsin teams in recent years. I really like how Wisconsin's playing. They got another big guy. You always think about how do these teams match up against the big bully the Big Ten is, which is Purdue now. Stephen Crowell can step away from the basket and knock down shots. And then they have some guys that are great slashers. A.J. Storr plays above the rim. So, Purdue is clearly the team to beat. But after them, you have Illinois, you have Wisconsin. I would have said Michigan State. And then look at Northwestern now playing well. Ohio State. So this conference race is going to be really interesting after Purdue. We'll see if anybody can steal some games against Purdue, though, as well.
Yeah, we're definitely looking forward to watching that play out. Not only your analysis, of course, here in studio, but calling games for the Big Ten Network. And the depth of the conference will show itself more and more throughout the remainder of this season. One last time here for Big Ten Today. Congratulations to the Michigan Wolverines on a national championship, making it to 15-0 on the season.